Hey everybody, welcome to this edition of the Gaming Tailgate Podcast. I am Chris. Joining me tonight, Tommy and Jeremy. How's it going, guys?
Pretty good.
Excellent.
Thank you for the response, Jeremy. We're going to go through a couple of latest happenings on the site related to NCAA football, and also Tiger Woods, and also Madden NFL. First off, we're going to talk about some information that came along a few weeks ago from the NCAA football developers. The developers reached out to numerous community sites, and they wanted to know, for future reference sake, not necessarily for 12 or 13, but just for down the line and for their own reference, they want to know for each stadium, home, neutral site, conference championship, bowl games, where did the band sit? So it's clear that at some point down the line, they want to add in bands. Obviously, if they wanted it for 12, they probably would have asked a while ago. But they wanted to know band locations where bands sit. Many people in the community went to work. We gathered information from numerous sites. We were able to house the list at thegamingtailgate.com. Brian Parker, Paca10, did a great job. He did a lot of work. I'm going to single him out here and give him a lot of credit of it. But we went through. All the stadiums are in and done. Real quickly, Tommy, how amazing was it in about one weekend that about 160 stadiums were able to get pictures and photographic evidence of where all these bands sit? And also, what do you think, whenever they add this in down the line, what can this add to the atmosphere?
Well, first of all, it was great that, with no kind of forewarning or anything like that, everybody just kind of jumped on board. And for fans of certain schools, they posted their own. Or for, like you mentioned, Brian, he went above and beyond the Call of Duty, basically scouring all over the internet to find all of the different teams, references for the different teams, where they sit and everything like that. And then even in the end, coming back and actually taking in-game screenshots of the bands and then drawing a box or square or whatever around the area where they actually sit as a reference to the game. Basically, his level of commitment was quite impressive. As for once it actually makes it into the game, it's basically just going to add a really kind of another step as far as presentation of stuff goes. If nothing else, it'll kind of break up the crowd to where it has a different look and feel. And as we notice in all of these different real life shots of stadiums, you can see where the band sits, and you can actually look and tell where they are sitting just based on their uniforms and stuff like that. So it'll be really impressive, especially if they have like the band instruments swaying back and forth with music or something like that. It'll be interesting to see how they actually develop it and how it turns out.
Usually a June release. This year, Tiger Woods 12, the Masters, comes out on March 29th. Today we find out the demo comes out on March 8th. It'll feature 5 holes from TPC's San Antonio Oaks course and also the 18th hole of the Masters at Augusta. Jeremy, let's talk about Tiger 12. How exciting is this year finally to have Augusta and the Masters in the game?
It's definitely going to be huge. One of the game modes that was described in a recent blog, Tiger at the Masters, you're going to get to relive all of Tiger's wins. You're going to be matched up with the exact leaderboard that Tiger faced. And with Augusta being so anal about detail, in a way it was almost a good thing. There are some just enormous details. Almost, it's going to be like you're playing Augusta. It's going to be just completely phenomenal to be able to hit around on there.
And also this year, the Tailgate Golf Association will return once again to thegamingtailgate.com. Jeremy, real quick, any idea when we want to get this started? And also, if anyone wants to sign up or start getting information, make sure to visit our site. But Jeremy, when would you like to get this started this year?
We'll probably do sign-ups. We'll probably start those about a week before the game releases. The game releases on March 29th. So probably about a week then, and we'll probably just get everybody together. We're going to 360 PS3 will all be combined into the same leaderboard, just kind of like what we did last year. So if you want to visit the Tiger sub forum in our site there, you can kind of get a good idea of the rules and how everything kind of went. We did get about 2.5 months worth of league play last year. But I would assume that I'll get that up about a week before the game comes out, and then we'll probably start the league within a week or two after the game comes out.
Recently completed on the site was our first ever Madden Community Wishlist Tournament. We did it a little late in the year, and we'll be the first to admit that the feedback may not be as hugely beneficial as it could have been. However, this gives us a good starting point for years on, and we'll get it started right on time this year. But let's talk about the Madden tournament and some of the common themes that emerged, and also how the franchise compares to NCAA football. Now, I will say first off, obviously we're an NCAA first and foremost focused website, so we're probably going to be a little biased to the college side of things. However, I know all three of us have given Madden a big try the last few years, and we all have our thoughts about it. First off, let's just talk about, Tommy, what's kind of your general perception of the franchise? Personally and community-wise, what do you think are a couple things people would like to see? And let me preface that by saying we know from the Madden podcast that improved defense, namely zone coverage, and also eliminating section blocking are some of the goals for the central gameplay team. So we're assuming that will be in both games, but obviously nothing has been confirmed yet.
The obvious first thing that a lot of people jump towards is just simply a drastically improved franchise mode. Bringing over some of the last-gen features, I assume that involves owner mode, things like that. Even just from the franchise mode tournament that we had as part of this wishlist tournament, it was obviously apparent that everybody had a focus kind of on the draft, basically improving not only the draft experience but also improving the draft logic. So franchise mode, I think, would really help, especially if they were able to not only improve franchise mode but also improve the online franchise mode. Those have kind of been untouched for a couple of years now, so it's probably one of the bigger focuses, I think, for the community.
A lot of parallels with NCAA. You see the zone defense, of course. With the central gameplay team, it's going to be a lot of the same issues on the gameplay side. Of course, there's a lot of love for the physics engine, as some get a taste of it with NHL now. That it kind of looks like it's going to kind of freshen things up. So that those two things were definitely high up on people's lists. Of course, the franchise mode has been untouched for quite a while. It's pretty stale. A lot of the stuff that came on NFL head coach's final game, a lot of that stuff was pretty interesting in the way that those were laid out. So once you get a taste of what you've had there, it would be definitely great to incorporate it into Madden, because right now that whole thing is just pretty dry. Same thing with the presentation. For some reason, the game itself just does not have that excitement feel that NCAA football does. So a lot of the real-time presentation and deeper stat overlays that made the finals there, those are some key things that are going to kind of freshen up the game a little bit. And then, of course, a couple other things that were just similar to, the more custom angles for the Superstar mode, which is kind of a hindrance for that mode. And then, of course, custom playbooks is another thing that is wanted on both sides of NCAA and Madden. So you can see a lot of similarities, and then you can also see, based on comments and everything, how that franchise mode definitely needs a jump start.
Personally speaking, I've always thought Madden was very dry, and while both games can be considered in their career modes to be kind of one-off games, because once you enter a game, you really don't have a connection. You don't get a lot of stats from the outside. You don't get a lot of conference stats, where they stand in terms of playoffs or BCS. You don't get a lot of outside world coming in. You're very insulated. I thought it to be very dry, Madden more so than NCAA, but a lot of that could also be NCAA football last year added in different offensive styles. So you can one week be playing an option team, next week an air raid, the next week a really run-heavy offense. Whereas in Madden, one week to the next is essentially the same. What can they do to really spice the game up in terms of that? Tommy?
For one thing they'll have to do is definitely, like you mentioned, put a focus on making the games feel different from week to week. For example, as the seasons go on, obviously your superstars like Brady and everybody else aren't going to be around, but they need to still put a focus on the new superstars, or put a focus on put a focus on how each team is performing through the season, where they're at in their standings of their division, things like that. Basically, make it so that you're actually playing a dynasty game instead of just playing a game that happens to be part of the dynasty.
Just a couple years ago, NCAA football was the one that people were kind of down on. Madden 10 had a big year with a lot of upgrades, namely on presentation. Granted, it needs to go further, as we've just explained, and based off the community wishlist tournament. But now, after last year, it seems like people are really high on NCAA football and kind of low on Madden, since franchise mode hasn't received the changes people have been hoping for. We know what the community has said through the community wishlist tournament. They're ready for franchise mode to get improved. They're ready for, obviously, presentation and atmosphere to get improved. We know the gameplay issues that exist in both games. But right now, personally, what do you guys say? How do you compare the two franchises? And I'll let Jeremy, you go first. What's kind of your view, and where do they stand compared to each other?
Well, I think a lot of the reason why, in my opinion, Madden is lacking behind is, I think the single key component to my longevity in the NCAA game, and I've played probably more seasons with 11 than I have in any for the Gen 3 console. With Madden, I think the key right now is to get that franchise freshened up, but also the key is for the online franchise, you got to get those key components that are in the real life game, such as free agency and a salary cap. And now we're kind of stuck with the CBA. We don't know what's going to really happen there, but I think that the free agency and the salary cap are two things that are really, really missing. Because with NCAA football, you got the excitement of fighting over your friends for recruits. Madden, you don't really have that. So off season, you're just okay. Well, that's it. Now, if you had all these in, you could fight. You could look to try to outbid your friend to try to get land that solid free agent. But you also got to kind of work within your salary cap. Those are some things that are going to add just tons of depth into the franchise mode. But unfortunately, they're just not there. So then, what is the other thing that you got to lean on in order to get some excitement out of the game? That's going to be your presentation, and right now that even kind of seems dry. A lot of that's probably with just the first year being Gus Johnson into the game. You took some Chris Collinsworth from past games. You're patching it in with some Gus Johnson brand new recorded scripts, and it was really patchy. So once they kind of you don't have that to really lean on either, so you kind of on both sides of the coin looking, that there's just not as much fun there as there is in the NCAA franchise.
To me, as a big Dynasty guy, I love NCAA football, online Dynasty, competing against different guys. Basically, NCAA trumps Madden's franchise Dynasty aspect. It whether it's online or offline, it just simply, the Madden version seems hollow. I mean, it's like it doesn't give you a big incentive to play every week, to start a new one or anything like that. It just kind of seems dead. And part of my frustration with that is that with the ability to basically know whether or not guys would be busts or not, it basically ruins that aspect for me. I mean, granted, you can play dumb and act like you don't know, but it's hard to do either once you know, or if you're playing an online Dynasty, somebody else is going to know and they're going to ruin the aspect for you. So to me, NCAA handles that much better as far as their recruiting classes, things like that. It just NCAA is in my opinion, I'm a big NCAA guy, so this is biased, of course, but NCAA definitely took a big step ahead in 11 compared to Madden. Who knows what will happen in 12, but for this past year, NCAA definitely takes the cake for me.
Great discussion, guys, and with that, we're going to wrap up this edition of the Gaming Tailgate podcast. For the latest on NCAA Football 12, as we're getting ever so close to finally information coming out for the Tiger 12 and our Tiger Golf League, and also Madden for that matter, make sure to visit us at thegamingtailgate.com. For Jeremy and Tommy, I'm Chris. Everyone, thanks for listening.